because all of us in our professional lives work in work environment. It could be corporate, it could be government, or it could be any work environment. But it's a work environment where you have relationships with people. So you have there are so many types of relationship one could have, and there are two aspects to the whole subject actually. One is on the culture of the organization, and second is relationships of people within the organization. Surely the way people relate to each other and they interact with each other is very sorry, sorry, sorry. So that is surely impacted by the way the company organization is or the culture is. But all said and done, despite all these being there, I firmly believe that people in their own sphere of circle can influence the relationship with people and ensure that they have a very meaningful relationship, which is lasting. But I think before we go ahead, let's understand what do we mean by toxic relationship. That's very important to understand. So I think everybody understands the two words very clearly. What is toxic? Toxic is something that your body is is not desirable for your body, and in case you consume it, you will get sick, you may die, you may face consequences of that particular consumption. And relationships is how people interact with each other. Now, once we say there is a toxic relationship, basically it means that whenever you get engaged in that relationship, it leaves you drained out. You feel less energetic and less enthusiastic. And I think all of us, if we go back to our childhood, when we used to go to school, the early years, and in case there was some issue with some of the teachers or maybe with our other students, there was an initial resistance right from getting up from the bed itself. I think if we all remember and relate to it, we don't want to get up from the bed because we don't want to go back to the school and go back to the same environment. Believe me, the same feeling you get when you get into toxic relationships. You don't feel like getting up from your bed. You don't feel like getting ready for the work. And you reluctantly go to work. And even when you are there, you're obviously not productive. You are not enthusiastic. You are not able to engage. And as a result, your performance deteriorates, your motivation deteriorates. And at the end of the day, uh, you suffer. And not only you suffer, your team suffers and the overall organization suffers. So that is how the toxic relationships happen. Now,
So here,
why I, yes,
Colonel,
please.
yeah, just wanted to make a small interjection. As you talk, you're talking more like a professor. Professor. So let me just tell the viewers that a little example of what you just said now. So earlier, as a journalist, as I grew up in my profession, there was a point when I was working in a newspaper, a huge newspaper company, and I prided myself on being a good journalist and sticking to facts and writing what I thought was correct. But in that atmosphere, there was something that used to frighten me. And every time I used to go to work in the morning, my heart would thud when I used to walk down the corridor and walk towards my desk. I used to feel, a certain sense of panic and fear. And it was not because of the job itself, because the job is something we know well, but it was some of the people, who you were working with, who created this atmosphere where you felt that fear. Because, see, as a young journalist, I felt that, see, I needed to work well so that I am happy with my work and also the seniors are happy with me. But here, there were many impediments that were coming in the form of people trying to put obstacles in every step that you made. And that is when you stop enjoying your job and you start feeling scared and panicky and you feel this sort of toxic environment. And this is exactly how what Colonel Verma has just explained in a very clinical term. Yes, back to you, Colonel.
Yes, ma'am. And I would also like to basically share my little life experience that I've had
Yes,
so far,
yes, yeah,
So it's been about 15 years that I left Army.
yeah,
And I will call Army also a corporate culture, to be very frank, because you have hierarchies and you have relationships there. So it's about 40 years and 4 decades of living with people and leading people. And it's 6 companies that I have been fortunate to have worked with, starting from smaller companies where promoters are the owners are leading the company. And working with companies like GE and Vestas, which are multinational companies. So you don't have owners and you only have the functional leaders there. And having seen all the environments, very different environments in a different set, I can say one thing very clearly. Uh, that is, in every organization, irrespective of the type of organization that it is, to some degree or other, you will always encounter a toxic relationship. It's part and parcel of the culture. And it's not because of you. What actually happens is many of us blame ourselves when they get into a toxic relationship. But firstly, let's identify what is a toxic. How do you know you're getting into a toxic relationship? Yes, you may not feel motivated. There could be something. But I think the signs we need to be looking around for is something when somebody's trying to bully you, like you also gave an example. When somebody's trying to bully you, somebody is there who always cuts you down, somebody who does backbiting behind us. He does a lot of gossiping, and at any particular point of time, he's always looking to find faults. And the worst is in case such relationships happen with your manager.
Yeah.
I think that is something that's the worst situation to have because it's difficult to change your manager.
Yeah.
You may be able to change your team member in case you are a manager, in case you find that the relationships happen with your team leader. And also with the team leader, you are in a better position of mentoring him, guiding him, and also probably solving the problem.
Yeah.
But with a manager, it becomes slightly difficult. So, and if you look at surveys which have happened, of why people leave jobs, why they leave companies. If you leave the top two reasons, which are generally related to growth, career growth, and compensation, almost 6 out of 8 reasons are all related to relationships and the inspiration that you get at work, the motivation that you get at work, and things of that kind, which are all related to environment. And I have been fortunate and also unfortunate. I can say that yes, there have been some cases even in my life where I was in a potential toxic relationship with my boss. It has happened. And I can relate to an example when I was in the army. Though it's like I said, we're talking corporate, but they are the same, like I said. And when I was very young and when I joined my unit, in 80s, 86, I remember, there was a company commander, he was a major and I was a second lieutenant. And he was the mess secretary. And I was one of the food member and liquor wine member, like that. But I was quite enthusiastic even at that point of time, and I had a lot of ideas how we can improve things. And I used to go to him with these ideas. Sir, why can't we do this? This is an issue there. Please help me out there. And for some reason or the other, he somehow took a dislike for me, as if I'm trying to question his authority
Yeah.
or I'm trying to be
Too
over
smart.
over Chetak and trying to score the. He has his own reasons. And that kind of relationship, which was almost in, I would say, 18 years down the line, it just happened that I again became his company commander. So he was the CEO. So he was the commanding officer, and I got posted to the unit as a company commander. And we again met. And the first opening remark he says, NK, I think you must be feeling miserable that you finally come under me. So you're like Hindi mein bhi say na, the oot pahad ke niche aa gaya. So now there is a day that I can decide your destiny. Maybe at that point of time you were not reporting to me and I could do that. So obviously you meet him the first day and that's what he tells you. So it was surely a bad situation for me, and it was surely a very potential situation. And that too when I had gone for my command report. In army the command report is you need to do well in a command report to be considered for future rank. So I was at that very critical stage of my career. But believe me, the first statement that I made to him, I said, "Sir, you have been keen to work with me or meet me. I have been more than keen to work. I think it's been a lot of time that probably were not shared notes, and clearly there is a clear sense of misunderstanding. I'm looking forward to because of what you have and what qualities that you have. And he's also done well in life, believe me. Okay. And I said, I want to work with you. And I'm sure it will be a day, maybe not today, but just very soon that you will not be able to do anything without me. He says, okay, let us see. And believe me, it happened like this only. It was just a matter of 2 or 3 months, and those basic doubts clarified, and we understood each other very well. We are still in touch. So what I'm basically trying to say that most of the toxic relationships happen when you break communications,
Yeah.
when you're not honest with yourself, and the other person is also not honest. And sometimes they happen because the person in front is actually having a very low self-esteem. And 90% of the time, the research says toxic relationships happen not because of you, because of the person in front, and emanates from a very low self-esteem. He is insecure, he or she is insecure, and somebody who's insecure, somebody, and they want to show that yes, they're not insecure. They would generally go aggressive, they'll go on an offensive, and sometimes people feel offensive is the best defense. That's what people do. So I think people who are in toxic relationship who are listening to the show, I would very strongly advise that don't react. You know, the quality that you need to really have is empathy. Empathy means put अपने आप को दूसरे के शूज में डालो. Just put yourself दूसरे की जगह पर सोचो भाई ये बंदा ऐसा क्यों कर रहा है? Why is he doing why he's doing this? And it is always a good idea sometimes, to talk to him very frankly, talk to him about his past and break that ice. And I've seen this working almost every time. And suddenly there is a flood of emotions that come out and the insecurities come out. And then you can become a good friend. आप उसके दोस्त हो सकते हैं, and you can actually help that person overcome that. It
Yeah,
works.
but Colonel, usually the person happens to be your boss and he has more influence. It can be very difficult also.
I understand. I totally understand, Meenaji. But let's understand one thing. What do bosses want? Let's be very clear first. I think like the same thing मैं empathy की जो बात कर रहा हूँ. What do any boss have? I've been a boss. I think most of us, the people on this call, would have been boss of somebody of you. You know, every boss wants somebody who can take his pain away, who can take the difficult task from him and leave him free for doing other things. Every boss wants that at the end of the day, and that's why you are in that team. So maybe in the initial, due to some miscommunication or due to any other reason, or maybe and mostly what happens, when you join a new organization, the people who are already in that organization sometimes feel insecure.
Yeah.
That's a very common thing to happen. For a new person, though they will say welcome sir, but at the end of the day, they feel insecure. I don't know what's going to happen to me, how good this guy is, and whether he will take away my powers. There's so many things that happen. And then the old relationships of the manager and his old employees continue, and there are back feedbacks that happen.
Yeah.
And also, what happens is, as managers, we take feedback from our older employees. And yeah, the
Yes.
new person has come. How is he? We do that. And you could have vested interest. Like I told you, if a person with so low self-esteem, you can understand the kind of feedback is given.
Yeah.
So the manager, if he's not matured enough, might make up his mind, very frankly. Oh no, this person is not good. But like we say, your work carries more your work communicates more than what your words communicate at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So my advice to people, which I have always followed, stick to what you're supposed to do. Be open and frank with your boss and ensure that you're able to establish a very regular communication with your boss. Lack of communication is something that creates maximum problem. So what I do personally, I ensure that I try and meet my boss at least once in a week personally, face to face. If I'm not able to meet him face to face, I speak to him on the phone, give him an update what's going on. And once a week, I send him a very crisp executive summary of what's going well, what's not going well, what's the plan for the next week or whatever it is, and status of things. So that he gets comforted that everything is in safe hands. The person is in control of the situation and he's seeking help wherever there is needed, and he can also then jump in and help. Moment you start doing this, it's just matter of couple of weeks, and believe me, this toxicity in a relationship between manager and employee would change. That's what at least I have experienced it. People can try this, and I'm sure they will. It'll help.
Maya is asking you, Colonel G, with work from home culture forced due to COVID, has this toxicity at workplace reduced? Is this why many companies, especially in USA, are still allowing a mix of work from home and work from office?
I think very interesting and very relevant question. Though the COVID is behind us, but many companies are still managing, have doing this hybrid. So let me share my personal examples here again. My previous company, when I was working with General Electric, I joined on 8th of March, and if you remember, 8th of March 20, and that's the time when COVID started. So the COVID started, the lockdown started just maybe about a week or 10 days after I joined. And my responsibility spanned all the entire Asia Pacific. So entire Southeast Asia, China, Japan, and India. So it was a huge area that I was supposed to manage, and I was having hundreds of employees and senior managers all over the place. And my best way of my normal style has always been to go there onto ground, meet people, and establish relationships. Unfortunately, I just couldn't travel. That 2 years was almost no travel, international or even national travels were difficult. So we had to adapt to this. And at the end of this, my 2.5 years in G, though when the COVID opened up, we did had some face-to-face meetings so that the leaders and people could get together and again connect. But it did not make even a smallest impact on the productivity or the morale of the people. That we ensured. And that was mainly because of the connections we could do by video. And always I used to insist on people switching on the video. Every time there was a call, I said, please switch on the video. And then there were one-to-one calls, you had frequent one-to-ones with people and not didn't always talk about work. You talked about their families, you worked about their life in nature. If I spoke to my manager in China, I always used to talk about the health of his family and this thing. So you connect on a personal level. And I think if we connect to people firstly on personal level and then followed on a professional level, we will have a lot of problems starting. And that's what even army teaches us, know a person. So specifically coming to her question, I personally feel there is no difference. And hybrid model is a very good model where it gives space to people to 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 ensure that they have a little freedom of time and can plan their work well, and also gives them time to meet face to face where specific things can be sorted out. And surely face to face coordination is much better, faster, and reduces a lot of paperwork. But I don't think the toxicity in relationship will be impacted whether you are on, as long as you are connecting to people on a personal level across your organization and across your team, it will not happen. Nothing will go wrong.
Yeah. Gautam is asking you, my question is, how do you deal with a senior employee who is not your boss but tries to behave like your boss?
I think it's a very common situation, very frankly. And like I started with, why does a person try to boss around? Because he has this low self-esteem. He is insecure about what he is, and he may want to behave like a boss. But I think we need to understand that if we follow some basic rules in any organization, and that is set expectations. Whenever you meet anybody and you have to have a relationship, whether it could be a reporting line relationship or it could be a cross-functional relationship. Typically, the two types of relationships that what we have is either a reporting line up or down. And this example that was asked was not a reporting line, so you are not reporting to him. So it's a cross-functional relationship. He may be senior to you. That's a different matter. So each of us have a different function and a different role in the organizations, and we are supposed to interact with each other on specific issues and periodicity. So whenever we meet somebody, break the ice firstly by trying to establish some rapport. And the next thing that you need to do is offer what you can help. So what is his pain point in being in the role that you are, where you can help him, and how do you communicate with each other? Like when I join any new organization, the first thing I do is set the ground rules for my team and my colleagues. This is my ground. This is how I will communicate with you. This is the frequency of communication. You can call me anytime between this and this. Please don't call me after 6:30. I might pick up your call, but I might not pick up your call. But if you still want to call me up, there's something urgent, call me 2 times at least. If I see your call twice, I know there's something urgent. Otherwise, first time I might not pick up. Once you set these kind of expectation, then the heartburn doesn't happen. The other person knows very well as to what, and he's fair to you, and then you can probably not have these kind of issues with that person. And most important, Ninaji, is I think one rule that I have written in my book, that is the fearless leadership, which is the ACR rule. Now, what is an ACR rule? ACR rule is very simple: accept, change, and remove. Whenever you're in any situation, first analyze whether can you accept the situation the way it is and can you manage the same. If you think you can accept it and you're happy with it, don't have to do anything. But if you can't accept the situation, like in this particular case, the somebody else is bossing on you, so you need to change something. Either you need to change your style of working and your relationship and interactions with him, or you need to ensure that he changes a bit. If you're able to do that, perfect. You're again better. You're in a good state. But if both these things don't happen, then remove yourself from the situation. That is the best thing to do. Now, how do you remove yourself from the situation? Over a period of time, you can convey to him that, boss, we will talk professionally only now. So, whatever you want, you can ask me like this, I will reply to you like this, and you can avoid the situation. So, this is what I would basically advise people. If you can just remember these three basic rules, it will probably help you how to what strategy to adopt.
Yeah. Akshita is asking you how to ensure your manager understands the difference between your work time and personal time.
Again, very, very good question. And this is where many of the conflicts actually start up. Your manager may be very fond of getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and start working and sleeping at 4 o'clock in the morning again or 12 o'clock in the night and work. And he expects that whenever he sends a message, he should get an immediate response or somebody should look at his mail immediately and in the morning 6 o'clock he should get a response. And also these problems happen when you're working in a multinational with different time zones. So if somebody is working with a US time zone or a UK time zone, that gentleman will be working night and for you it is day and the other way around. So I think we come back to the basics again. Ultimately, we need to understand what does the manager want from you. The reason why you are in his team is because he expects something from you. So whenever you join a company or join a team, I think if you can set that expectation right, and you can ensure to kind of comfort your manager that don't worry, this is how it is, and whatever is expected, it will be delivered. But my request is, please, after this time, leave it to me. And whenever you want it, if there's an emergency, there could be emergencies in work. This is the rule we will follow. Like what I told you, call me twice and just don't send a message. So at least I know there is an emergency and I'm available for an emergency. As long as you know, as a matter of rule, you're not available all the time. But if there is really a dire need, you will surely be available where whatever time of the day it is or night it is. I think most managers understand very well.
Yeah, yeah.
And if he still doesn't
Colonel,
understand it, then that's not the place to work. I would
yeah.
say this.
Colonel Verma, let me tell you one more incident that happened in the place that I worked in. So there was this group who were, very adamant to make sure that my life was miserable. So what they did was, see, our job as the assistant editor at that time was to do not only edit but also to do the pages for the paper. And by the evening you put it to bed and then it goes for print. So when I did that and I went off by 5:30, I went off home. The next morning, I would be shocked to find that my pages had a lot of errors in it. And then I got very panicky, and I started, asking some of my friends. And you'll find it very strange that in the technical department, my friends were actually Pakistanis. You know, and they were the ones who said, "See, you don't worry. Let us see what we can do." And they were technically very very strong. So they found out that there were some individuals who were coming late at night and changing some of the words, making planting mistakes. So this is with this proof, I went to the editor in chief and I showed them both. And then there was an investigation that happened, and all these people were pulled up. You know, but then by then I had realized that I cannot survive in such an environment because see, your mental happiness is also very important. When you have
That's
people
right.
all ganged up and they don't care about anything, they only care about mediocrity and nothing more. So any person who would challenge them, they would make sure they kick them out. So I had to leave that establishment because for my own what you call sense of health, and or join another establishment. And these are things that happen very frequently in Gulf. I was working in Dubai at that time, and it happens very frequently where mediocrity thrives. People are
Yes,
happy with mediocrity because then they don't feel threatened at all.
absolutely. And I think totally bang on, man. The right point you said. When you have people who are not confident about themselves, so it's like a crab mentality. They want to pull others down to their level of mediocrity. And so it's very important for us to choose the kind of company that what we join, whether what kind of culture that company encourages. Does it encourage excellence or it encourages mediocrity? And at the end of the day, you can understand this because a company who encourages mediocrity is going to go down, is going to
Absolutely.
remain a mediocre
Yeah,
company.
absolutely. One last question, Karan, before we end this session. It's from Siddharth Verma. He says, with the work from home culture, you're expected to be always available on Zoom calls and on your phone. How do you deal with this?
Again, Siddharth, the point comes to whether you are in a company which encourages and wants you to be 24 by 7, you know, and it is physically impossible. Whether somebody expects you to be 24 by 7 or not, it is physically impossible to be there. So normally good companies establish a lot of rules on this. Like I remember in G, because I had my manager who was in New York, and I had one manager who was in Paris, and there was somebody else who was in Australia. So I was working across a time zone from US to Australia. You can understand the time differences that are there. And the company really encouraged green time zones and red time zones. So there was a simple table made which says in case the participants come from these countries, then this is the right time for you to have the call. When it is comfortable for people to be attending. It may not be very office time every time that's starting from 8:30 or 9. Sometimes you have to start a call at 7, but that's perfectly fine. At least it is not at 3 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock in the night, you know. So people need to do that, and if they happen to be getting stuck in such a situation, I think then best is to get out of the situation in case the company or your manager doesn't understand, because you can't change 100 people.
Absolutely. So thank you, Colonel Verma. That was a wonderful talk and wonderful points that you put across. And we hopefully will meet next week as well and look at other issues as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good night
Thank you.
and
Thank you,
Jai Hind.
Minaji. And thank you, audience. Thank you, everybody, for joining.